Welcome back to the Pi Live studio. Raveena, could you kind of introduce yourself properly, say where you're from and the sort of work you're doing at the moment?
Brilliant. Thank you, Will. Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Raveena. I'm the Director of Marketing and Admissions at Brunel Pathway College. Since you asked where I'm from, I'm actually originally from Thailand. So I was an international student myself, came here for university, fell into a higher education job, and yeah, been here ever since, basically. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, and so yeah, tell me what are the main trends you're kind of seeing in your part of the sector at the moment? I mean, in terms of numbers and yeah.
I think, like a lot of people at the Pi Live already mentioned today and throughout the course of other sessions as well, that it is quite a challenging time in higher education. I think there's a few things that we are seeing at our end. We're actually quite reliant on South Asia as a market, like a lot of other universities were as well, because we saw that huge boom during and post-pandemic, because the UK was one of the regions that was open. So we had a lot of students who were coming into our foundation, pre-masters, first-year programs as well, which are really popular. But now with it being challenging times, been a huge dip in the South Asia number of applications that we were receiving. So the prime reasons for that was, one, the rumors around the PSW being curtailed. I think that had a huge impact on students' willingness to try and come to the UK. The second thing was the dependent policies. I think that impacted markets like India and Nigeria quite massively, because they just felt it was a more hostile environment and a bit closed off. The other thing is we work with price-sensitive markets, whereas China, for instance, is not as price-sensitive, but India being price-sensitive, even the increase of the IHS fees, the international health surcharge, had a huge impact on them making a decision to come into the UK. Plus, I think because Brunel is based in London, we've also been hit by the cost of living crisis. I think maybe some other universities are not as impacted by it as we are, but that's something we have to factor into consideration into our recruitment practices. So measures we're taking into place is obviously trying to make sure that we tell students about the employment opportunities, because obviously no matter what we say, London is still a great destination to be at. There's huge opportunities right at the Brunel doorstep, because we're just a few minutes away from central London. So it's promoting that employability aspect despite everything with the PSW. The other thing we're trying to do is mitigate the circumstances of cost of living by offering scholarships, so that Brunel University and the Pathway College are both having a huge driving force towards scholarships to try and make it a bit more welcoming, I guess, for international students, and a bit more affordable as well. But, yeah.
It's fascinating. You mentioned sort of employment opportunities. I think that's it's interesting, because I've been speaking to people today about, and you know, some people have mentioned that there's sort of limited data around, you know, but what do you guys see? I mean, do you collect data yourself around, graduate employment? Well, tell me more about what you know, at least, I guess.
I think we don't quite do enough as well. I think there's definitely a bit of a gap there where we need to probably track all of the alumni and what they're doing, because I think even from the sessions today, what I've heard is really tracking those student success stories, where they actually end up, what jobs they end up in, because students today are actually quite well informed. They want to have literally a clear pathway of what they'd like to end up doing in their future. So I think I heard in one of the sessions they said they even track the LinkedIn profiles of people they would potentially like to turn into in the future. So I think we probably have got alumni and ambassadors, but I think we still have a long way to go in getting to a point where students can actually envision their future and what would happen to them after they've gone through the Pathway College and the university.
Perfect. And in terms of what do you feel like the main challenges are for you guys, and what are you trying to do to address those challenges?
That's a big question, actually. We could spend all day answering that. But I think the biggest challenge I'm speaking specifically for our institution. Like I said, we're based in London. So we have quite high fees. There's also the cost of living crisis. I think that's the biggest challenge we're facing at the moment. It's a bit of a barrier for international students. We're trying to come across as a welcoming prospect for students. But the cost of not just the fees, but also the cost of coming and living here is a bit of a barrier. So we are, like I said, putting scholarships in place to mitigate that situation. The other challenge that we're seeing is obviously a bit of dependence on South Asia, so we slowly have to try and diversify the portfolio. the challenge, of course, with other institutions as well is considering return on investment, and diverse markets will obviously mean more investment in those regions, and we don't necessarily have the budgets to do that. But I think it's explaining to senior leadership, and we've got quite a supportive senior leadership, so we're fortunate with that, is explaining them that if you want to expand into markets like LATAM, it will require that investment, and it might be a bit of a slower burn, but it is worthwhile in the long run, because that means we are not just dependent on regions like South Asia and can see that diverse student population, which is not just great for the institution, but even for students coming in to have that bit of an international experience. Because I've been in higher ed for about 10 years, and the same conversations we're having about India, I feel like we were having about China 7 years ago. So the students would come in and say, my classroom needs a bit more diversity. I'm not having that experience that I thought I would coming into the UK. And now we are seeing our Indian students say the same thing to us. I think we're at a mature point now with Indian students, and at some point something does have to change. So maybe it's just that shift is going to come into play in the next couple of years, I see.
And I suppose what you were saying there about investing in diversity, of where you're recruiting people from, the countries, I think that's really interesting. But can universities afford that kind of investment at this stage? I mean, how do you because obviously, budgets could be, I don't actually know what the specifics are now, but I mean, I know that's a big ask for lots of institutions, in terms of the funding, the way that their finances are, but it sounds a really sensible thing to do, but so is that a bit of a problem? I mean, but how's that overcome?
Yeah. I think it's about being selective and clever with the budgets. So you can't obviously diversify into all of the different markets, but I think this is where events like the Pi Live and industry data, and I think we're quite a data-informed industry anyway at this point of time. We've got access to so many different pieces of information that we can utilize to inform what markets we could focus into. And I think someone was saying earlier today, with higher education being so friendly, we're not just preserving the data that we've discovered, we're quite open into sharing that information with our peers. So that really helps in informing our decision into which markets we want to focus into. The beauty of being at a pathway college that works with Brunel University, we actually share data with each other. So that really works out well. If we've got key areas that we want to focus on as Navitas or as the Pathway College, we discuss those with Brunel Uni, and they share the same with us. So we have this kind of intel, and all of it is data informed. So we look at that, base our decisions on that, and then have heavier investments where we feel we will get a return basically in the future. But yeah.
Perfect. I think is there anything else you'd like to talk about? So yeah. No. It's really, really interesting speaking with you, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you. No, it's really interesting.